What if your mind was so powerful, so unshakable, that it made people uncomfortable just by your presence? Imagine walking into a room and without saying a single word, people sense something different about you, an inner strength that cannot be faked, a presence that cannot be ignored. Most people spend their lives trying to blend in, to be accepted, to wear a mask that hides their real selves. But what if instead of hiding behind that mask, you uncovered a deeper, more authentic power? The kind of power that Carl Jung believed comes from facing the truth of who you are. This isn't about arrogance or domination. It's about building a mind so strong, so resilient, that it naturally unsettles those who still live in fear, insecurity, and self-doubt. Carl Jung's psychology teaches us that the human mind holds depths most people never explore, and it's within these depths that true strength is forged. Think about it. How many times have you felt like you were holding back your real thoughts, your real self, just to avoid judgment? How often have you played small because you were afraid of how others might react? A strong mind doesn't shrink itself to fit the comfort of others. It expands, and in doing so, it challenges everything around it. You've probably experienced this before, meeting someone whose confidence and calmness felt almost intimidating. Maybe you couldn't explain why, but you knew they were different. That's the energy of a mind that has mastered itself. Have you ever wondered how to build that kind of presence? Jung believed that most people walk through life half asleep, trapped in illusions of who they think they should be. But when you awaken to your own potential, when you confront the parts of yourself that most people try to bury, you begin to cultivate a power that feels unshakable. And here's the surprising truth. It isn't about being louder, smarter, or more aggressive. It's about depth. The depth of knowing yourself so well that no external chaos can shake you. The depth of seeing through the masks people wear while remaining grounded in your own authenticity. That's what terrifies people, not because you threaten them directly, but because you remind them of what they're avoiding within themselves. The world is filled with shallow distractions and surface-level connections. But when you operate from a place of psychological depth, everything changes. You carry an energy that commands attention without asking for it. You inspire respect without demanding it. And yes, you even awaken discomfort, because your very existence becomes a mirror of what others have not yet faced. The power of such a mind cannot be overstated. It is magnetic, mysterious, and, to some, even terrifying. So how do you build this kind of mind? What does it really take to step beyond the ordinary and tap into the deeper forces Jung uncovered in human psychology? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely shift the way you think about strength, power, and the human mind. And maybe as you're listening, certain memories or feelings are already surfacing. Moments when you sensed your own strength but chose to hide it, or times when someone's quiet confidence left you in awe. If this resonates with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Share in the comments what struck you the most so far, or perhaps an experience where you felt the weight of a strong mind, whether your own or someone else's. Your perspective adds depth to this conversation, and it might even inspire someone else who is going through the same journey. If you find this message meaningful, take a second to like this video. It may feel like a small gesture, but it truly helps this channel grow and ensures that more people searching for wisdom, for psychology that actually transforms lives, will find it. And if you feel called to explore these ideas more deeply with me, don't forget to subscribe. By subscribing, you're not just following another channel, you're becoming part of a community that values inner strength, timeless knowledge, and the courage to face the truths most people avoid. Your presence here is what makes it all worthwhile. Every comment, every like, every new subscriber expands the reach of these ideas, carrying them further than I ever could alone. Together, we're creating a space where powerful minds can grow, connect, and transform. And as we continue, let's go even deeper into Jung's insights, uncovering the exact steps that allow you to build a mind so strong it becomes unshakable in the face of anything. Most people live their entire lives behind a carefully constructed mask. Jung called this mask the persona, the version of ourselves we put forward to fit in, to be accepted, to avoid judgment. It's the polished image we present at work, the agreeable personality we show to friends, the curated identity we display online. But deep inside, beyond that surface, there are hidden layers we rarely allow anyone to see. And here's the uncomfortable truth. When your mind becomes strong enough to see through these masks, both in yourself and in others, You begin to carry a presence that unsettles people. It's not because you expose them directly, but because your very awareness becomes a silent mirror of what they're hiding. Think about the times you've met someone who seemed too perfect, too composed, almost as if their entire identity was a performance. You probably sensed something was off, even if you couldn't explain why. That's the persona at work. A strong mind, however, isn't fooled by appearances. It detects the cracks, the unspoken doubts, the truth beneath the surface. And that ability, this quiet clarity, can feel threatening to those who depend on their masks to survive. Jung believed that mental strength begins with stripping away your own persona. That's not easy. It demands courage, because the mask gives us comfort. It allows us to avoid rejection, to escape difficult conversations, to dodge the pain of being truly seen. But a mind that dares to remove the mask and confront its own raw self begins a process of transformation. You stop living as a character in someone else's play and start writing your own script. That shift in mental energy alone can change the way people respond to you. And here's where the impact becomes even more powerful. Once you've faced your own hidden layers, you can no longer be easily manipulated. You're no longer swayed by shallow approval or empty praise. That independence makes others uneasy because it challenges the invisible rules of social games. A strong mind doesn't need to shout or dominate. It simply sees, and that sight alone is enough to unsettle those who rely on illusions. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject because the persona is only the beginning. Behind the mask lies something even more powerful and also more dangerous, the hidden side of the self that most people deny at all costs. It is here that the real revelations begin, where the journey toward unshakable strength takes a decisive turn. Before we continue, write in the comments, "The mask is real." I want to know how many of you recognize the weight of this truth. Behind the persona lies something far more unsettling, something Jung called the shadow. If the persona is the mask you wear for the world, the shadow is everything you hide beneath it. The flaws you deny, the fears you bury, the desires you pretend you don't have. It is the raw, unfiltered side of the human psyche, and most people spend their entire lives running from it. They cling to their polished image while secretly wrestling with what they refuse to admit. But here's the truth that shakes people to their core. The more you suppress your shadow, the more control it has over you. Think about it. How many destructive decisions are made not out of conscious choice, but out of hidden insecurity, envy, or resentment? How many times have you seen someone sabotage their own success because of unacknowledged anger or fear? Weak minds deny this side of themselves, hoping it will disappear if ignored. But the shadow doesn't vanish. It leaks out in passive aggression, in self-doubt, in addictions, in the quiet ways people betray their own potential. And that's why a strong mind is different. Instead of turning away from the darkness, it confronts it directly. Jung believed that transformation comes from integration, not denial. When you bring awareness to your shadow, you begin to take back power over it. The anger you once suppressed becomes energy you can channel with purpose. The fear you once avoided becomes a signal that points to growth. Even your most uncomfortable desires, when understood, can teach you about your deepest needs and motivations. Integration doesn't mean glorifying your darkness. It means owning it so it no longer owns you. And this is where people start to feel intimidated, because once you're no longer at war with yourself, you become harder to manipulate, harder to control, harder to break. There is something unsettling about someone who is not afraid of their own flaws. Most people hide their weaknesses, but when you face yours, you radiate a quiet confidence that others can't quite explain. You stop pretending to be perfect, and that authenticity carries more power than any facade. It disrupts the illusions people cling to, and it reminds them of the truths they are still avoiding. That is why a strong mind, grounded in self-awareness, can feel almost terrifying to those still trapped in denial. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because the shadow is not just a psychological concept. It is a doorway to resilience, freedom, and inner authority. When you walk through it, you step into a new mental territory where strength is no longer an act, but a state of being. Write in the comments, "I see my shadow." Let's see how many here are willing to acknowledge that hidden side within themselves. Once you begin to recognize and integrate the shadow, something deeper comes into focus. The path Jung called individuation, the slow, honest transformation of becoming whole. Individuation is not a costume change. It is the backstage work of bringing your scattered pieces into alignment. Most people move through life divided, torn between the image they perform and the truths they conceal. That fragmentation breeds anxiety, impulsive decisions, and a constant search for approval. When you begin to unite light and shadow, reason and emotion, you create a steady center that reshapes your mentality and radiates quiet authority. People feel it before they understand it, and it unsettles those who still live in conflict with themselves. To individuate is to let your emotions inform your reason without letting them hijack it, to let your values guide your desires without denying their energy. It's the inner engineering of character, where hidden motives are brought into the light and repurposed with intention. This is not self-judgment, it's integration. The result is a different kind of power, not volume, but gravity, not posturing, but presence. You stop chasing validation because your choices start flowing from coherence. That coherence reveals a hidden truth. Peace is not the absence of struggle, but the mastery of it. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject because individuation is lived in the micro moments, the subtle negotiations behind your impulses, the small corrections after a misstep, the private revelations that change tomorrow's behavior. You notice the instant your persona wants to perform and choose a truer response. You feel the shadow tug for control and convert that force into disciplined action. Over time, these quiet decisions accumulate into a durable self-respect. The impact is visible. Your boundaries become clean, your focus sharpens, your presence grows heavier in the best way. It's a journey, not a stunt, and the further you walk it, the less reactive and more intentional you become. That is why people sense an inner authority around someone who has embraced this work. It exposes the truth they have postponed. If this speaks to you, write in the comments, "Wholeness is power." There is a certain kind of strength that doesn't announce itself with noise or spectacle. Jung believed that real authority is rarely loud. It doesn't have to prove itself through constant talking, exaggerated gestures, or the need to dominate every room. Instead, true power lives in silence, in depth of thought, in the ability to observe without rushing to react. When you meet someone who carries this kind of energy, you notice it immediately. They don't need to raise their voice to be heard. The weight of their presence says more than words ever could. A strong mind doesn't crumble under pressure, and it doesn't waste energy on needless performance. Its calmness is its weapon, its clarity is its shield, and its grounded nature creates an impact that leaves people both curious and unsettled. Think about the moments in your own life when silence spoke louder than any argument. Maybe it was during a conflict, when the other person expected you to explode but instead you stayed composed, letting the silence reveal more than anger ever could. That restraint was not weakness, it was mastery. People often confuse aggression with strength, but in truth, aggression usually comes from insecurity, from the inability to contain what's boiling inside. Silence, on the other hand, requires discipline. It is the ability to hold back, to think before you act, to choose your response instead of being dragged around by impulses. That is the mark of emotional mastery, and it radiates a kind of authority that others can't quite resist. This depth, this quiet strength, is intimidating because it exposes something hidden in the background of social interactions. Most people are terrified of silence. They fill every gap with words, distractions, or noise, afraid of what might surface if things get too still. But when you are comfortable with silence, when you can let it stretch without anxiety, you demonstrate that you are not running from yourself. You've embraced your own company, your own thoughts, and your own presence. That self-assurance is magnetic, and at the same time, it unsettles those who have never experienced it for themselves. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because silence and depth are not just about holding your tongue. They are about reshaping your mentality, about stepping into a truth that changes how you move through the world. A strong mind knows that silence is never empty. It is filled with observation, with insight, with revelations waiting to emerge. Write in the comments, "Silence is strength." I want to see how many of you recognize the hidden power that lives in stillness. Most people live their lives under an invisible contract. They do what is expected, they say what is safe, and they chase recognition as if it were oxygen. From childhood, approval is rewarded and disapproval is punished, so it becomes second nature to seek validation at every step. But this dependency creates fragility. When your sense of self depends on applause, the silence of others becomes unbearable. Jung's psychology reveals the hidden truth. Authenticity is greater than conformity, and a strong mind chooses meaning over validation. Think of how many decisions are made each day not from conviction, but from fear of rejection. Dreams are abandoned because someone might laugh. Truths are buried because someone might disagree. This constant search for acceptance turns life into a performance, leaving the real self in the shadows. A strong mind, however, no longer bargains for approval. It moves with clarity, guided not by the noise of the crowd, but by the quiet call of purpose. And when you stop living for applause, people notice. They can't easily predict you, they can't control you with praise or criticism. You become free in a way that unsettles those who remain chained to opinion. They may admire you, they may resist you, but they cannot ignore you. That is the impact of authenticity. It cuts deeper than charm, it lasts longer than popularity, and it carries a gravity that imitation can never match. This freedom is not achieved once, it is practiced daily. It is in the small choices, saying what you believe even if it's unpopular, pursuing a path even if it's misunderstood, holding your ground when the easy road is to conform. Each of these decisions builds inner authority, the kind that Jung described as essential for individuation. In that state, your worth is no longer rented out to the opinions of others. It is owned fully by you, and that ownership terrifies those who remain trapped in the cycle of approval and rejection. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because once you're no longer enslaved by validation, you awaken something ancient within you, the archetypes of strength that give structure and direction to your presence in the world. Write in the comments, authenticity over approval. Let's see how many here are ready to step into that kind of freedom. When Jung explored the human psyche, he uncovered recurring patterns of strength, timeless roles that appear across history, myth, and culture. These archetypes are not abstract ideas, they are forces within you shaping how you think, decide, and lead. Among them, 3 stand out as pillars of inner authority: the warrior, the sage, and the king. The warrior is discipline embodied. It represents courage, endurance, and the willingness to face struggle head-on. It is not blind aggression, but purposeful action, the kind of force that fights not for ego, but for meaning. The sage, by contrast, embodies wisdom. It seeks hidden truths, questions appearances, and values clarity over comfort. The sage looks beneath the surface, seeing patterns and insights that others overlook. And then there is the king, not as a tyrant, but as the figure of order, responsibility, and vision. The king archetype organizes chaos into structure and carries the weight of decisions that impact not just oneself but others. Most people live these archetypes in distorted extremes: reckless warriors, detached sages, or controlling kings. But when a strong mind integrates them in balance, something rare emerges. A presence that commands respect without demanding it. You can feel it in the steadiness of their choices, in the calmness of their voice, in the way they lead by example rather than by force. This integration transforms the inner world into a foundation of authority that others instinctively respond to. The impact is unmistakable. People sense the discipline of the warrior in your boundaries, the wisdom of the sage in your reflections, and the authority of the king in the way you take responsibility. You don't need to announce these roles. They reveal themselves naturally through your actions, through your presence. And that presence can be both inspiring and intimidating, because it exposes the truth of what others could become if they faced their own inner fragmentation. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because archetypes are not just roles to admire. They are energies waiting to be claimed and embodied in your daily journey. Once you align them, you step into a form of strength that feels timeless, grounded, and unshakable. Write in the comments, I embody strength. Let's see how many here are ready to claim the archetypes within themselves. Suffering is the one experience no one escapes. Jung understood this deeply, and so did Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of concentration camps and later wrote that those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. Pain, loss, disappointment, failure. These are not signs of weakness. They are the raw materials of growth. But most people see suffering as something to be avoided at all costs, as if comfort could protect them from the truth of life. When hardship arrives, They collapse because they have never built the inner tools to endure. A strong mind does something different. It takes suffering and bends it into meaning. Instead of being destroyed by pain, it transforms it into fuel, and that kind of resilience unsettles others because it highlights how fragile their own defenses really are. Think about the moments in your life where difficulty forced you to grow. Perhaps it was the loss of something you thought you couldn't live without, or a betrayal that shattered your trust, or a failure that seemed unbearable at the time. Looking back, you might see that those moments shaped your strength more than the easy days ever could. This is the secret hidden in the background of suffering. It is not meant to crush you, but to carve you into someone deeper, someone stronger, someone more real. Jung would argue that to avoid suffering is to avoid transformation, and Frankl echoed this by saying that meaning is found precisely in the places where life hurts the most. Resilience is not the absence of pain, it is the mastery of it. A resilient person doesn't deny what is happening, but neither do they let it define them. They turn wounds into wisdom, scars into stories, and obstacles into lessons. And when you carry that kind of energy, people sense it. They may not know your history, but they feel the weight of your experience in the steadiness of your presence. That's why resilience can intimidate. It reveals a kind of hidden authority, the authority of someone who has been tested and refuses to break. This is not about glorifying suffering or seeking it out, but about recognizing the truth. Life will bring it whether you want it or not. The question is not if you will suffer, but how you will respond when it arrives. Most collapse under the pressure, but the strong mind reclaims power by choosing meaning, by refusing to let pain go to waste. That choice reshapes not only your mentality, but the entire trajectory of your journey. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because resilience is only the beginning. Beyond endurance lies a life driven by purpose, where meaning itself becomes the ultimate form of strength. Write in the comments, pain into power. Let's see how many here are ready to transform suffering into strength. A mind that has endured suffering and transformed it into resilience discovers something even greater, the call to live with purpose. Strength on its own can protect you, but when it is fused with meaning, it becomes a force that shapes not only your life, but the lives of those around you. Jung believed that meaning was the highest form of strength, the anchor of the soul. Without it, resilience becomes mere endurance, a way of surviving without direction. With meaning, every challenge, every failure, every sacrifice becomes part of a larger story. Purpose is not the same as chasing recognition or collecting achievements. It is about clarity, about aligning your actions with the truth of who you are. When your life has direction, the small irritations of daily existence lose their power. You are no longer easily thrown off course by criticism, setbacks, or distractions because you know where you are going and why. That kind of focus radiates an energy that others can't ignore. It unsettles those who are drifting aimlessly because your presence reveals what they have avoided, the need for a why. When you meet someone living with genuine purpose, you feel it immediately. They don't need to convince you of their vision. You can see it in the way they speak, in the steadiness of their decisions, in the fire that drives their journey. It is not frantic or desperate. It is calm, certain, and quietly powerful. And that power cannot be fabricated, because meaning is not something you invent. It, too, is something you discover through truth and experience. A terrifyingly strong mind is never detached or indifferent. Its strength is not wasted on proving superiority. Instead, it is directed towards something larger, something that transcends the self. This is what gives purpose its transformative force. It sharpens your mentality, anchors your choices, and makes you resilient in the face of uncertainty. And the deeper you live from this place, the more magnetic your presence becomes, because people instinctively recognize when someone is walking a path of meaning. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when purpose joins with self-awareness, shadow integration, and resilience, it creates something rare, a person others cannot ignore. Write in the comments, purpose gives me power. Let's see how many here are ready to claim that truth. When all these elements converge, self-awareness, the courage to face the shadow, resilience forged in suffering, and the clarity of purpose, you arrive at a state few ever reach. It is not perfection, it is wholeness, and wholeness carries a gravity that changes everything. A person who has done this inner work radiates authenticity. Their strength is not loud, yet it commands attention. Their confidence is not arrogant, yet it disarms doubt. Their authority does not need to be demanded, because it flows naturally from within. In a world obsessed with appearances, this kind of mind feels both rare and unsettling. People sense it when you walk into a room. They feel it in the way you listen, in the steadiness of your silence, in the certainty of your decisions. Some may fear it, because it reminds them of the truths they haven't yet faced. Others admire it, because it awakens the possibility of their own transformation. Either way, you cannot be ignored. This is the ultimate impact of Jung's psychology. Not to build a mask of strength, but to cultivate the real thing. To live without needing constant approval. To embrace both light and shadow. To endure suffering with dignity, and to anchor your life in meaning. When these qualities come together, you carry an aura of inner authority that speaks louder than words. It is the authority of someone who has faced themselves fully and emerged whole. In such a state, you become more than an individual. You become a model of what is possible when a person refuses to live in fragments. Your life becomes an example of transformation, of mental clarity, of strength without performance. And in a world built on masks, that authenticity is revolutionary. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because becoming the person others cannot ignore is not about dominating. It is about inspiring, unsettling, and awakening something hidden in everyone who encounters you. Write in the comments, "Wholeness is strength." Let's see how many here are ready to embody that truth. If you've stayed with me all the way through, it tells me this message resonated with you on a deeper level. And if it did, this is the perfect place to keep building that strength together. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next conversations we'll have here, because each one is designed to take you further on this journey of awareness, resilience, and purpose. I'd also love to know who made it to the very end. Drop a comment saying, "I'm with you until the end." That way, I'll know this spoke to you, and others who read it will feel the same connection we've built here. And if the ideas we explored today made sense to you, give this video a like. It's a simple way to show that this kind of content matters and to help this community grow stronger together. There's another video right here that complements everything we've talked about. Click on it and continue with me there. I think you'll find it opens up the next layer of this journey.